Yes, sir.
I'm watching a progress bar. Redirecting to YouTube. Okay, I believe you are good to go.
All right. So good evening, everybody. I would like to call our June regular school board meeting to order at 5:32. Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. That was interesting. Okay. We need to add an item at the end of the action. So it'd be action item 7 of the OEA contract extension. Is that correct, Lane?
Be the OSCA MOA.
OSDA. What is it again there, Lane?
OSEA MOA.
Okay. So I move that we add the OSEA MOA to action item number 7.
I'll second. So James moved, Tim seconded to add to the 7th item of the action, the OSEA MOA. All those in favor, thumbs up. Aye.
Aye.
That Ken said aye. Okay, so that's unanimous. Consent agenda.
I move we approve the consent agenda as written and amended.
Second.
Kent moved to accept the consent agenda. James seconded. All those in favor, aye.
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 Okay. And okay, on to reports and discussion. Lane, district.
Okay. So distance learning for all in the 2019-20 school year has come to a close. Just want to commend our staff on doing an incredible job, rising to meet a known challenge with little time to prepare and with changing requirements. So it was a little bit like building the airplane while you're trying to figure out how to drive a dog sled. It was interesting. So this year has been a unique experience. Hats off to Brent Meister, Brent Colley, Corey Culp, and a number of other staff for their work in producing this year's graduation festivities. It wasn't, our usual, but it was about as good as we could do considering. And I thought Mr. Richardson also did a good job for giving his parting thoughts to the class of 2020. Folks were a little.
I didn't know what to expect, and I was pleasantly surprised.
Yeah, I heard of that a lot, and I think there's, after we kind of get some time away, I think it'd be cool to put our heads together to see how we can keep some of those things that were nice about parents being able to say individual things and teachers being able to say individual messages. I don't know if the graduation day ceremony is the place for it to happen, but we have places like junior senior banquet or other things where we can try to build those traditions back into it. So overall, it was pretty cool. Our food deliveries,
time frame for the video to be available?
it was up on Facebook Live, and then I know we were trying to figure out how to get it onto YouTube. I don't know, Jason, did that ever get figured out between you and Brent Colley?
But this is the first I'm hearing of it, so nobody ever told me about it.
Okay, so then we'll get that up on the YouTube.
Okay.
You're gonna send an email out or send that out and whatever you send on the link on the app and what have you. I don't even know what Facebook Live is. So
Well, no, there could have
We
been,
also have a McKenzie YouTube channel now where all these meetings are, so we can put it up there as well.
okay.
yeah.
Can you put that link on the app or something, a shortcut to that, or
Yeah, I think we'll just email it out to all staff, but we can put that up on the app as well and push that out. Let's see, food deliveries ended that week of June 11th. I know it was something the families really appreciated. It was also a lot of heavy lifting. So hats off to Kelly and kitchen staff and all the folks that helped deliver and build those lunches and meals. So I don't know if you heard, but OHA and ODE finally delivered their guidance for fall reopening. So I shared my report. The link is there if you want to look at the document itself. So Brenda's been assembling the planning team. We'll meet next week to start drafting our plan and work through specifics. So each district and then building or to draft plans, selecting our desired delivery model. So having students on site, having hybrid options, or being solely online. You have to have a good reason to be solely online. The state really wants there to be some sort of human interaction. And then off of those includes 8 required planning areas, such as the public health protocol, facilities and school operations, response to outbreaks, equity, instruction, family and community engagement, mental, social, and emotional health, and staffing and personnel. So yesterday during our off the record meeting, the superintendents and central office staff got training from ODE regarding the first portion of the plan. And then tomorrow we'll continue looking more into the pieces like equity and instruction and those sorts of considerations. So that plan is due to ODE by August 15th. We have to work collaboratively with Lane County Public Health as well. So that will have to be shared to you all before it gets submitted. So we've got a little bit of work to do on that. We don't have any definitive plans or what we're due yet. We need to still break down the guidance and then come together and put stuff up and then have it blown to pieces and try again, because it's going to be interesting. I think, initially, having everybody on site would be the best way to do it, but there's a lot of nuance in how we're going to handle students getting on the bus, what we're going to do for screening, what are we going to do to help keep cohorts of students together, minimizing mixing of students. So there's a lot of unknown things that we need to sit down and poke some holes in and move forward. But that has started, and you can look into that if you'd like.
Lane?
Yes.
Sorry. Just I think I read something that you sent us that the board doesn't actually approve the plan, correct? We just need to be aware of it.
Yeah, I just have to give it to you and present it.
But that has to be done in a public meeting as opposed to through email?
I believe so. I'll ask that, or I'll ask COSA and ODE what they'd rather have.
Okay.
So I haven't looked at it yet. So based on what you just said, they gave you some real wide sideboards and how to do what you think. There was no clear guidance or direction.
Well, there's that's cute. There's how do I want to put it? There's enough direct guidance and requirements to make sure that what the state wants us to do is being done, but there's enough of you have to make decisions to make people that want to have decisions not made at the state level feel like they're making decisions at the local level.
Sounds about right.
So, do we have to do daily screening of every kid that comes in? And do we have to track how many other cohorts that student stay crosses? Yeah. How we do it, it's not like the state's going to give us the set framework and form to do it. We just have to do it. So it's
okay. Yeah.
Last week, OSEA reached out to the district hoping to roll over the current contract for another year. So given our circumstances, it just made sense to have that done. And then so you should have received that email this afternoon. And then we'll meet with them in January to start working and bargaining their next contract. So it wasn't anything beyond what we talked about as we were going into looking at this, and they were really excited just to have it taken care of and done with and moving ahead. So they were excited about that. So then just know that we're continuing our work to build the district centered on equity. The events of the past few weeks have shown that this work is vital in supporting our students, especially those who battle racism every day. So racism has no place in our schools. And I just want you to know that our students appreciate your support in ensuring that McKenzie doesn't tolerate racist acts and that we continue to build a equitable and inclusive environment here. I don't need to go into all the what's going on in the world, but because you guys see it and you read about it and you see it on the newspaper, I'm just proud that this board has been so supportive in making that the culture here at McKenzie is a safe place for all students. So that's the end of my district report. Any questions?
No.
All right, see no questions. Thank you, Lane. Brent, hi.
Hey, how are you guys doing?
Good, how you doing?
Doing okay, thank you. Sorry, I was a couple
Good.
minutes late. Yeah, so to echo some of the things that Lane alluded to, it's been a very interesting go for the last few months, just in getting things wrapped up. He talked about how we have wrapped up our distance learning for all section of the school year. I wanted to just let you guys know that we have a really remarkable group of teachers here at McKenzie, individuals who are willing to do whatever it took in ways that we haven't seen before, just because they were doing it in different ways, but just going out of their way to reach out to families and students and try to do their best to make sure that they were connected and engaging in meaningful education during this last couple of months. We've had teachers who've completely changed how they do things in order to reach those kids, and teachers who are realizing that some of the things that they've done are going to be really valuable tools in their tool bag going forward as well. So I just want to make sure you guys are aware of the extra effort that they put in during all of this. As we know, this is unprecedented in terms of what we're dealing with, but they really rose to the occasion and did their very best to meet the needs of our students. So yeah, we've wrapped up the school year. Grades are in K through 12. Those are going to be mailed out I believe tomorrow. And then we're finalizing reports and all of that kind of stuff to wrap up this school year. Also want to thank Nancy and Wendy. They've been very consistent and very helpful in everything that they're doing at McKenzie as well in the building, as well as Jason with all of his help with things that we need. So thank you guys. Yeah, and it's been just kind of a slow, steady drip from ODE in terms of things coming out that we need to be working on, and maybe not always coming out at the best time in order to get going on them, but we know that they're out now. Like Lane said, I've been assembling a group of folks to be addressing our reentry blueprint and getting that going. So today I met with our transportation director, and we talked about some of those details around what it's going to take to bus students given the new requirements and parameters. Also met with a group of teachers to talk about what can next year look like. We want to make sure that everybody's on the same page, and we want to get everybody's input, and we want to be able to work together to do this. Had a really good meeting with a lot of the teachers today, and discussed some of those things and what different options, whether it was on-site or hybrid or on-site/hybrid, what those could look like, and people are open to different options. I think people are open to embracing some of the things that we were using in this last couple of months, like the Google Classroom platform, for a lot of different uses within day-to-day stuff. to provide consistency. And so I think there's going to be some good things that come out of this in terms of long-term systems and planning. And yeah, we're also making sure to be looking at it through our equity lens, like Lane was talking about, making sure that all of our students have access to everything that they need, so that we can fulfill our mission of guiding the next generation of our community and learning about themselves, their communities, and the world. But yeah, it's been a journey. It's been interesting. It's been challenging, but we appreciate your support.
And I know a meeting or two ago, you mentioned, we were having a hard time getting a hold of all our students. How did you do on that when it was all said and done? Were you able to reach all of them, or some?
Well, I think we were able to reach all of them throughout the course of this, but we weren't able to ensure that all of them regularly engaged in the material. Yeah, that's just going to be a challenge. That's not something that we can force on families remotely, but we were able to make contact. There were some families that we maybe made contact with once, and I'm talking about maybe 2-3 families most.
Yeah.
But for the most part, we had varied levels of engagement from most of the students.
And, and I'll be honest, that's my concern with the, blended classroom next year of online, half in the class is how do you keep the kids engaged if they're in and out? I'm definitely concerned about that, as I'm sure you guys are.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that, more regular contact with the school and teachers is better than what they were getting in-person contact, that is.
How did, I know it kind of fell by the wayside, at least I'm assuming, like attendance. How does that factor in with this online?
With the distance learning for all that we just completed, or going forward?
Both.
Well, with the distance learning for all, I mean, essentially we were counting folks as being there, but there was really, there was some level of attendance taken, but in terms of what ODE wanted, our ADM was pretty much set as of March 13th. Is that correct, Lane?
Yeah.
Yeah. And then going forward, I don't think we've gotten all of the specifics around attendance, but it's going to be similar, I think. And, if students are at school, they're at school.
Yeah.
If they're attending remote lessons through a hybrid model or something, for, we need to consider students that might be at risk with health issues that would preclude them from being here, that kind of thing.
Or students with family members who are, have got or having COVID symptoms, like, those kids would have to be home isolating as well. And so these are just the carve outs that they've talked about with the attendance piece so far, James. Like,
and I fully understand that. I'm just, how I know this year it was so hectic this last several months. Next year it'd be great to know that there's going to be some more. I don't know how to be accountable for your student not being there, but like you said, if they're home because they've got somebody in the family who's got some symptoms, that makes perfect sense.
mm-hmm.
But that doesn't give them the excuse to not.
No, but in the current model, we have to drop a kid who hasn't showed up for 10 days regardless. So this would tell, ODE is telling us for those sorts of things, we wouldn't have to do a drop from our rules after 10 days for things like that.
No, I guess I'm not making myself clear.
James, are you speaking more?
We have some accountability, some tracking to assure that they're getting what they need and not just.
Are they still getting? Are you talking about? Are they still getting a quality education?
Exactly. I want to make sure just because they're home, we're making sure they're getting what they need.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's something that we'll need to take into consideration and do our best to ensure, given, it's been such a unpredictable
Oh, yeah.
few months. I would hope that come fall things are doing better, but we have to wait and see.
Okay. Yeah.
All right, any other questions for Brent? Okay, then moving forward to Wendy, financial.
Okay, May revenue was $279,013. Our expenditures, $294,091. Accounts payable, we spent $75,226.80. Payroll was $123,583.53. High school student body spent $64 in April, and elementary student body spent $656.36 in April. I spoke with FEMA. Someone requested that I check into FEMA, so I did check in with FEMA about the McKenzie expenditures. We didn't have any expenditures that qualified for FEMA reimbursement. If we do have expenditures in the future, I can still reach out to FEMA. Right now, McKenzie School should receive some CARES Easter grant. Hopefully we'll hear about that pretty soon. But that's where we are as far as grant money. And do you guys have any questions on the financial report?
So how much did we have to dip into our carryover?
Well, that's an unknown right now. I feel like we spent a lot of money, but I don't think we're done spending. And I should know in July or August what the beginning fund looks like. Is that what you're asking me?
Yeah, I guess I know we carry that over so we can cover all our expenses through the summer and get the school year started before taxes start rolling in.
Right.
What's your gut tell you? Are we at a point to where we feel pretty comfortable we're still going to be able to cover those? We just won't have any kind of cushion?
My gut tells me I am going to say currently I would guess around $340,000 if you were to ask me right now what I know. But I don't know what's going to happen between now and end of June, revenue or expenditures. But that's where we're at. I put in the budget 400,000, so we're short.
And how does that affect, presuming that the state cuts budget for next year?
Then that
It doesn't affect carryover, does it?
Not currently, but it will in the long run, depending on how we make adjustments if we do get any reductions from the state.
Right, that makes sense. Okay.
Yeah, and reductions are pretty unlikely because we always kind of guess our ADM low. So if anything, we got a little bit more than what we were expecting. But I think filling in some of the stuff we had to pay out to get this distance learning stuff off the ground, not being able to recoup that's kind of hurting.
Right. So did the state step up, or I know we provided a lot towards the meals for the last several months, 5 days a week. Did the state step up to cover any of those expenses?
Are you talking the meals that went home to students that you're talking about?
Correct, yeah.
Oh, yes. When I looked at what we spent and what they gave us, it was pretty equal. So we did okay.
Okay, good.
Any other questions for Wendy?
No.
All right, then moving on to Josh. Hi, Josh, for the McKenzie Community School Report.
We did not have quorum this last meeting, if I remember correctly. We held the meeting for about 15 minutes, kind of hold off to as long as we could to allow somebody come in, but we really don't have a whole lot to report at this time.
Okay.
Lane?
Yeah, I think just kind of waiting to see what the reentry plan is, and then how that affects the charter school and what role the charter board can play in helping disseminate some of that information. But I think, yeah, summer gets tough for people to get together sometimes.
I presume it's gonna be kind of tough with the opening of some sort of hybrid model next year and dealing with the charter tenants with that. I mean, it is what it is, and you just do the best you can.
Yeah, I don't know what to expect from that end of it, being this is the first start of the school year I'll have on the board. So.
Okay, any other questions? Thanks, Josh. Thanks, Wendy. I don't think I said it. Thanks, Wendy, for your report before.
Welcome.
Lane, facility report.
Okay, so I'd like to kind of hand it over here to Marlene Gillis. You might remember her from Soderstrom. She's been working with us since last summer on our facilities report, our long-range facility planning report, and our seismic assessments. So I think we're just going to go through, what we found, and then we also have some facilities committee members here, like Cliff and Tim Lowy. Looks like he was able to connect to kind of share a little bit of their impressions on the work we've done as well. So, Marlene, should we have Jason let you share your screen to show your slides?
Yes, I did a test if that's okay with our IT. I've been having problems with share screen, but I think it should be good if you're willing, or he can share it too, but I've got it pulled up on my end if you can make that happen, Jason.
Okay, go ahead and give it a try, Marlene.
Okay, let's see. All right, can you guys see that?
Ooh, very nice.
Nice. It's supposed to be that, sorry. It's a little bit more familiar. Okay, thanks everybody. As Lane said, thank you. My name's Marlene. I've been working with your team for almost a year now on determining what you have, what you may want, and how best to get there. So this presentation tonight, we'll talk a little bit about myself and our firm and what we do very briefly, talk about the results of the facilities assessment, and then also the long-range facility planning process to date. I think COVID had some impacts on that, definitely. And then we'll talk about the state grant funds available. I'm sure several of you are aware of that, but just kind of go through that very briefly. And then, go back one step, the long-range planning. As part of that committee, we did develop some options for scope. The intent was to kind of take that broader, but again, with the ability to meet being curtailed, we took it to a point, and then we have, I think, some questions for the board tonight. End of this, it'll be open to questions and next steps. As always, questions throughout would be great. So definitely, if you have anything you want to ask about, please feel free to interrupt. But I will try and use your time wisely. So again, my name's Marlene, work for Soderstrom Architects. I've been working on schools for a little over 20 years. Absolutely love working in smaller rural districts. The drive to the McKenzie School District is my favorite of all. You live in a very beautiful area. We've done a lot of these assessments and long-range plans recently. Not always, but quite often the end goal is a bond. And so we really feel that that's our success. This picture is the alternative high school at St. Helens that replaced 6 trailers that they had on site for over 16 years. So talk about a message you're sending to your high school kids who may or may not be at risk. It's really nice to be able to use this building to tell them how important they are. So that was a great project. That's why we do what we do. So we'll go into the facilities assessment report. Initially, it's a pretty specific process that ODE structures. There's a lot of spreadsheets involved. What ODE is really looking for in the assessments is the condition of your buildings compared to what they were like when they were first built new. So if you have a high school built in 1940s, the state spreadsheets will tell you what it's going to take to get that up to new 1940s condition. So it doesn't factor in things that may be a priority, structural, hazardous materials, and then also how you want to teach and how's that changed since 1940. So that's the first phase. The facilities condition index is a number that compares repair and replacement costs to kind of evaluate that tipping point, but it is pretty specific and fairly isolated to those existing building conditions, interior and exterior. So this is based on ODE's recommendations. This is how the schools rank. And then this is kind of that line. I'm not sure if you can see my cursor. I'll do a little arrow. This upper kind of dash line, that's the cutoff that indicates buildings are no longer worth repairing and you should really consider replacement. So if it's more than 30% of the cost of the building to replace it than to repair it, ODE says, you know, it's a good candidate. You're approaching that point where you're throwing good money after bad. So the elementary school in particular has a lot of, you know, there's not many issues it doesn't have. You know, the educational adequacy, seismic, their hazardous materials, overall efficiency, and just the condition and age of it. High school has some similar issues. You know, it's next. That's primarily due to its age. There has been a fair amount of work that has been done on it, but between its age and its size, district office, you know, this 10% to 30%, this mid-range, and again, just physical condition. They look at exterior and interior, so they're looking at siding, roofing, windows, but they're also looking at finishes and systems, mechanical, electrical, plumbing. As these numbers get smaller, what that means is the need is lower. It may be a little bit counterintuitive, but this transportation building pretty much functions as needed. Not a lot of requirements for that building. When we go through and overlay those aspects that we talked about in that previous slide, relative to educational adequacy, seismic stability, and hazardous materials, accessibility, that's another piece. The buildings start to rank a little bit differently. And then this one is ranked 0 at the bottom, means that it does not meet any of the requirements of what you need. And 100 means it performs perfectly, right? So in this chart, the taller the bar, the better performing the building. So when we overlay those, we get pretty similar performances. You know, the district office, the gym building, and the transportation building, not a lot of needs there. Elementary is still your highest need building. It's the least performing. And then your high school is kind of in the middle there. So this is just a chart that sort of breaks down. Again, ODE looks at these two numbers in these kind of central columns. The repair budget, based on what they've identified, these are costs that are built into their spreadsheets, versus a replacement budget. And this is just a straight cost per square foot based on the size of the building. You know, this is what it would take to repair, fully replace everything in your district. Doesn't mean that's what we're recommending. It's just part of the process. You know, this is that index number we just talked about, and then that facilities condition grade that takes into account additional factors. All of those things together still point to the elementary school as being the highest need building on the campus. So that's the bulk of what we did as far as the facilities condition index when we were looking at buildings. And again, to go back, we had our mechanical electrical engineers walk the site with us, and our structural engineer walk the site. They created reports, and we've integrated their comments into these rankings. We're looking at the condition of, again, the exterior envelope, including windows, siding, and roof. And then we're also looking at interior finishes, and then systems. You know, are we keeping kids safe, warm, and dry, right? What's our ability to do that to help them teach, help them be taught? So are there any questions on the results of those?
Just a quick one. So that replacement budget, that is an apple for an apple, right? There's no changes on it. Okay.
Well, the only thing the state spreadsheets take into account, for example, there's a different cost per square foot for district transportation buildings maintenance buildings, and then elementary, middle and high, and even gymnasium buildings. They have a different baseline cost per square foot, but that's all baked in, and all they're looking at this is the size of the building and the function of the building.
I guess what I mean there is, so that elementary budget, that's based on a 38,000, 39,000 square foot building. Okay.
Yep. So any elementary in any district in Oregon, that size, you're going to get that number.
Okay.
Right. Does that answer it?
Yeah.
Yep. Okay, great. Any other questions? Okay, cool. So then the long range facilities planning, ODE also still has some pretty specific steps to this. We like to start the process by trying to get a gauge for what the district priorities are. Hopefully you can read this. Again, as the further the bar's over means more people voted for this. This is the disclaimer on this, is that it was a pretty small sample that was tested for this. So it may or may not skew things based on that. But the initial marching orders at the outset was that maintenance and repairs, safety and security, technology, those were the more priority items. Classroom additions, athletic facilities, and new school building were at the bottom of the list as far as priorities. That's when we were asking our planning committee and what they felt at the outset. It's nice to kind of check in with that as we go through too. The long range plan has these 6 specific requirements that ODE has in their population projections. We'll talk about that. We did have a demographic study done. Collaboration with local government is often for larger school districts where they may be impacted by nearby housing developments or the availability of open land to be able to add schools, grow their campuses, that kind of thing. I think the sense that we get from the committee is that the long-term needs for the foreseeable future will be accommodated on the campus. So we should be fine. I still try and reach out to them. Community involvement is a really important piece to ODE. They really want the voice of the communities heard in their schools as much as possible. So they mandate that as part of the process. Historic building information, they want to make sure that we're taking into account any historic character and nature of your buildings and trying to provide a value to that, whatever that means. And then the educational adequacy standards that we talked about. Do these buildings work for how you want to teach now versus how you were teaching when they were built. And then the end result is that 10-year proposed plan. We typically will go out further than 10 years because for districts, that's actually often a short timeline. But that's the minimum that we would cover as far as our plan. So those are the steps that are required. This is the summary demographic chart that talks about the red line on the left is your historic enrollment for the last 10 years. And then to the right is your high, low, and mid-range, which is also the recommended enrollment for the next 10 years. The demographers anticipated a very steady rate of growth with little to no overall significant increases or decreases over the next 10 years. So as a committee, you have the option to take the higher or lower range too. I think the feeling was that this mid-range, this recommended line was pretty accurate for what you would predict for the area. So
Marlene?
Yeah.
Is that mid-range just an average of the high and low, or is that it's got its own algorithm?
They don't just take the two and factor it. I'd have to go back through and look at the report as far as exactly how they make them, and it's hard to see. I'll see if I can even zoom in. Oops, a little bit more. It's a little fuzzy. There are actually 2 lines there. One is the mid-range and one is the recommended range. So they do have different algorithms to figure high, mid, and low. And then when they overlay all 3 of those, they come up with a recommended. It's a little bit unusual for the recommended to follow the mid-range this closely, but it's not just a straight interpretation of the average of the 2.
Got it. Okay, thank you.
Good question. Okay. So early on, because of the scale of the project, often with a long-range plan, we don't get to the level of kind of doing detailed drawings based on needs that have been identified. But with the McKenzie campus, we really had the opportunity to kind of dig in and look at lots of options. The elementary school was identified, like I said early on, as having a pretty high need. So we looked at several different ways you could meet those needs with additions and renovations to the existing school. And there's several more iterations in the documents for that. We can go through that. We did do the same thing with the high school. And the high school had, I think, probably a little bit more site impacts relative to the bus canopy, the connection to the science building, kind of the pick up and drop off for the students at the back of the school here, as well as some of the issues with the sun on the west side of the building in the front, and then primarily focused around the administration and creating a more open and secure front entry that allows for better supervision. So we looked at lots of options for that. The gymnasium too, which is, I believe, the newest building on the campus, pretty low needs, but there's still some things that were identified there. And we went through and kind of looked at, what those would be and how best to solve those. District administration and the maintenance office also kind of getting smaller and smaller needs. Was not a lot identified, but there were still a few minor items. And then even the transportation building, you can see we're getting pretty small. It's down to one bathroom is really about the only issue in that building. But we still tried to kind of identify and talk through each of those things, look at different options. And then as a committee, we came up with what we felt was, a couple good approaches or a primary approach to solving what we identified in the long range plan. So the overall improvements takes the some of the facilities assessment identified scope, but then also overlays it with what the district has identified as far as needs. The estimates for that, the $1.4 million, there's a pretty detailed list of what that entails. We can go into that, but right now the intent for this presentation is to really kind of keep it at a higher level and talk about, the direction we were headed before we were really going to widen it up and open it up to more public outreach. With COVID and not being able to meet, that kind of curtailed that. So the next kind of significant direction that we talked about was the elementary school. Because we were over that tipping point for recommendations for replacement versus additions, it really had a lot of advantages to just create a new elementary school wing to the left side of the high school and kind of bring the whole campus down a little closer and a little more central. So that's what this represents, and that's what these costs are indicating. It's a 10 classroom wing with a library and a small administration. So a very compact elementary school, taking what we felt was most essential from the existing elementary school and then utilizing the high school campus for the rest for things like cafeteria and commons, which they're currently doing. This did also include a pretty significant addition renovation to the high school to create a secure vestibule and renovate the main office so that they have really good line of sight to the front of the building. There was some work, some dollars in there to better utilize their existing library space too, which is really oversized and could be a great student space. The thinking with this administration renovation was to create a central front office for the entire campus to get rid of some of the issues that they have with supervision and separation at the elementary school office where it's literally separate. You can't really see what's going on in the elementary school there. What we're doing is we're creating a central front door. Anybody that wants to interact or talk to or get a kid from the elementary school would come in here. So, and then the consolidation, the efficiency of the consolidation with offices, multiple offices for people that have multiple roles, we'd be able to kind of minimize that. This slide just shows a little bit more detail on that elementary school addition. Again, very straightforward kind of preliminary design where you have this central core with library and administration, and then classrooms on either side, and a special education classroom on the end adjacent to the playground. This is one of the images that we had done of what that could look like. Obviously, your buildings have a very distinct character. We would want to kind of make sure that this matches with that. So this would be the side of the building, obviously, that faces the high school, and the drive around the campus. And then this is a little bit more detail of that administration entry. It would also involve upgrading the restrooms, which is part of the baseline scope, I think, throughout, upgrading those restrooms for accessibility. And then this is another just kind of a quick image that we did of what that addition would look like. This is your existing high school gymnasium. You know, we're proposing to get rid of that door, which is a little problematic from a flow standpoint. And then we would funnel everybody through here, but your front office staff has a great view of the parking lot and entrance to the building, can really have good eyes on for safety and security. So this piece, sorry, before I get into the numbers, does anybody have any questions on any of the ideas that we've been presented there? I know there's lots of really good feedback and input that represents, but I know there's lots of good ideas and questions from this group too. Oh, I think you're muted, James.
Yeah, it's a ticky-tack thing, but what about a covered passageway between the high school and the elementary school? You know, winters are pretty harsh at times, and kids are going back, and we already said we want them to utilize the high school for cafeteria and what have you.
Nope, that's a very good point. So we didn't put anything in overhead here because of the bus access, but I think we could definitely. It has to be up like 14.6, a little bit high. We do have this crosswalk, and what we've done is we've proposed to kind of punch this corridor through the high school to create a nice direct connection. So they're not outside for long, but I do think that that would be a good point to put that in there. Yep, good point. Any other questions or comments or concerns on what we've seen as far as some of the planning scope to date?
And I guess the other question would be, you're showing a basketball court off to I guess the west there. Is that covered?
Yes. Yeah, the idea is we'd be replacing the covered play structure that's at the elementary school currently. Yep, that's a good question. I didn't say that. Thank you. Yep. Yep. Okay. Okay. So then when we start talking numbers, all of these numbers, we've attempted to take project costs for them. So they may seem a little bit high. So project costs are really everything that costs a district to build it. So you take your construction costs and you add about 35% to that to cover permitting, your furniture, your technology, your fees. So these are all in numbers. These are numbers you would ask for in a bond, for example, right? So it gets a little bit tricky relative to the facilities assessment scope. So bear with me. What this 4.6 million represents is when we went through and identified everything that was needed as a priority list to get the buildings up to as new condition with the district, minus what we don't have to do if we do the more significant addition renovations, right? So you'll look at the elementary school, for example, we've got some site costs in there, and then this is that soft cost. That's that category that kicks it into, that includes construction and soft costs. So we get the entire project cost of $390,000. When you go back through and look at what was identified and needed at the elementary school, there was quite a bit more work than that included. I want to see where that one is. I want to say the number was closer to 6 million, but if we're doing a new elementary school at the 11.9 million, a lot of the work that was identified as needed repair and renovation, the roof, for example, the finishes, that gets deducted from the needs list. So this gets to be a shorter list. So the high school does have a fair amount of work identified. Again, a lot of that work is actually around the buildings that sort of interact with the high school more. So there is interior renovation that does include restroom upgrades for accessibility. It includes finishes. There's some mechanical And then it also includes dollars in there, I believe, for the connection to the science building, and then also enclosing that exterior science building corridor to make that interior. I believe also with that, a renovation of the bathrooms in the science building itself to get those back online. The gymnasium has a fairly minimal amount of scope, but there is some work identified in there as far as the shell. There's some work on the siding, the interior. There are some issues with the gym floor in one specific location where there's been some foundation issues. The electrical upgrade, I have to go back through and look at that. I'm sorry, that's a big enough number. I don't think it covers a generator, but there were some upgrades identified from our electrical engineers on that. District office had actually had pretty minimal scope in there. The site work, well, I do have to apologize on that. I don't know why that site work would be quite so high for the district office, because I don't think there's anything identified for the district office relative to the site. So I will take a look at that. I have to go back through. Sometimes I change one thing and it has a downstream effect. Transportation has the most minimal work of all, really. It's essentially a bathroom upgrade, generally speaking, a few other minor items. So where the costs get in, what we talked about as far as the long range planning scope for the elementary school, that wing addition, 11.9 million, the high school addition renovation at 3 million. And then the site and demolition associated with that at 1.3 million. The one thing that we haven't talked about is the seismic retrofit. And right now on this sheet, we're calling that out at the high school gym. The 2.5 million is the grant dollars available. It's not necessarily what it would be budgeted at, but that's what, if you are awarded the grant, that's what you have to spend. So we end up putting that in there as the total cost, and then we actually take it back out if we're awarded the grant. We want to make sure that if we're going to commit to that scope, we have the budget to cover it, but we want to keep that separate, because oftentimes those are projects that we run on a separate track. The timeline on those is a little bit different is all. So when you get awarded that, you may not, you just may not know when you're going to get those funds. They're a little bit more competitive. And I was going to try and see on my slides. We'll talk about those grants in just a couple more slides. So I just want to have a couple more summary slides that kind of go over what we talked about. This is that oh, yes.
On the last slide.
Yeah.
Is there's no awesome grant in there. Is that
Not
correct?
yet. That is correct. So this is all out of pocket. This doesn't take into account any state grant dollars yet, but I will.
Okay, and then one more question.
Mm-hmm.
Is my recollection is that the last bond that we did, that the district did, relative to the number of dollars per thousand of property was worked out to be roughly 15 million for this bond. So if you take the cost per thousand from the last bond and carry that over same figure forward, roughly, if I recall, it was 15 million. Did you look at that, or did anybody look at that?
Well, we've talked about that, I know, and I know that was, so I think what you're looking for is what is the bond capacity available if we still had that on the rolls and you didn't want an increase, right? So what would be the carryover from before? And I may have to defer to Lane on that one as far as what that number is, because we have talked about that, but I don't know off the top of my head.
And I'd have to pull it up just to be certain, but I know it was somewhere between that 15 and 19 would be the same cost per thousand. I just talked to Carol from Piper Jaffrey, and she said our projections look the same even with the economic downturn. So, you know, we're pretty close to being at that 15 and over would cost about the same, if not a little less.
Right. Okay. Thank you.
Yep, that's a good baseline to kind of for reference. So this page. Oh,
I'm sorry. I had a question also there.
Yeah.
So the demolition, I'm assuming that's the classroom portions of the elementary, but I haven't heard any conversation about the shop there, the wood shop, the metal shop, and I'm assuming those are being maintained and retrofitted to whatever they need to be?
Yeah, there's some dollars in there for upgrading that bathroom that's in there. There's some minor amounts in there. If that building were to stay, trying to think of it, it shares, the roof is not in great shape, right? So we may need to have some dollars in there to replace that roof. But generally speaking, there's not a lot of scope identified for the shop, but there is some. And those would remain. That's the plan. Yeah.
Okay.
Actually a great.
The pagoda as well would stay.
Yep. Yep. That one stays too. Yeah. Any other questions? Lane? Nope.
I don't know if this is the right spot, but I wanted to show them at some point you had that slide with the elementary, some of the original ideas. And I think part of the other thing to keep in mind when you're looking at these numbers is like that 6 to repair this whole building. Those wings doesn't include seismic. Okay. But then if we open up and do those repairs, more than likely we're going to be on the hook to do the seismic upgrades if we're going to have kids. So you see here, that's why we tried to shift over to one bank together, is hopefully that way we could use that seismic retrofit grant to make that half of the building seismically safe, but there wouldn't, that 2.5 wouldn't get us enough to have both of these wings be safe in an earthquake because of the way they were designed. So it's, if you look at those, yeah, the ODE figure says 6, but it's going to cost more if we repair it to do the seismic retrofit upgrades that we need in order to keep kids in those classrooms. I just thought that was a point that I wanted to touch on.
Yep, that's a good point. If you touch it and add on to the existing, you have the burden of bringing it up to current code for all of those aspects: ADA, structural, hazardous materials, of course. So there are a lot of costs associated with touching and keeping this existing building, and that's when you start approaching a similar cost for replacement with new. Right. Yep. I think that's a good point. Okay. So then this next slide, this 10.7 million is the number that was identified in the state spreadsheet for that whole repair and renovation scope as new baseline, everything that was identified that didn't add any space, didn't change anything, but fixed the roof, fixed the finishes, fixed the mechanical, and got the buildings up to as new condition district-wide. So again, most of that was represented in the elementary school. There was a fair amount of that, but then there is still cost for the high school, gymnasium, district office, and even the transportation. And then this is again that summary of what we just talked about, what we saw. If you were to do it all, and again, this is really just part of the planning phase. There's nothing that's been committed yet. We're just trying to identify options, show you what it could look like, and give you as accurate an idea as we can of what we think it would cost to give you the information to help make the decisions. These are not necessarily our recommendations. This is just how far we took it as a committee. So the 23.5 million includes everything we looked at for the elementary school, for the high school, and then the site and building demolition, and then that reduced repair and renovation overall, taking that original 10.7 down to 4.6 because we're taking some of those buildings away entirely. So that ends up with that piece. And I do know when we start talking about grant funds, so we'll just touch on these real quick and then we'll go back to the overall numbers if that's okay. So we did talk about how McKenzie was awarded the Awesome Grant, which is, you have $4 million matching funds available through the November election. So what that means is in order to get those funds, you have to pass, up to that 4 million in a bond. If you pass 3 million, you'll get 3 million. If you pass 2 million, you'll get another 2 million, you'll have 4. In order to get the full 4 million, you need to pass at least that at least an $8 million bond so that it's a 50-50 match. They would give you half at that point. It is a use it or lose it. So it was awarded for that specific election. Even with the COVID issues, if we elect not to go out for a bond, You can reapply, and you have essentially, you don't have an increased chance or decrease. There's not a special list if you've deferred and not gone for it. You just kind of get in line with everybody else for the next chance at it. You can, but again, you can continue to apply. There just are no guarantees, and specifically, there's no advantages if you've been awarded it before that you're more likely to get it again. So that's the Awesome Grant piece, which is our matching grant. The second piece is the Seismic Rehabilitation Grant. This one's a little bit more confusing. It is awarded by a different entity. It is not a matching grant. You don't have to go out for a bond for it. Districts can simply identify projects, have them evaluated, which is the application, submit. If they're awarded, they can do the work. So McKenzie has been awarded a TAP grant, the Technical Assistance Program grant, to do the application for this grant. So they've said, we will pay for you to do the report to evaluate a structure, a building, which that evaluation and that report is your actual grant application for this program.
So quick question on
Yeah.
that Awesome Grant. It's
Yeah.
you can lose it. What is the success rate of a school putting in? I mean, we put in this year, we got it.
Mhm.
What's a typical success rate? Is it once every 5 years? Is there?
I'll be honest, I don't think there is a typical success rate. I think districts have a much higher increased chance of success with the impact of of having the Awesome Grant. People understand the value of that. But it's really hard to quantify how that impacts the success of the bond itself.
Okay.
If that's what you're asking. So we've worked with districts, St. Helens, they didn't get an Awesome Grant, I'm sorry. There's been a handful of districts that we've worked with that have received the Awesome Grant, but there's been several that we've worked with that passed bonds without it too. And then we've also worked with Grants Pass for the last year or so. They had the Awesome Grant. I think they went out 2 or 3 times and their bonds failed. So it's really, part of it is the message and what the community feels. I think you still have to have a good value represented with the bond scope. I think people have to understand that, what's being proposed is still money well spent, even if the state's paying half of it. They want to feel like they're getting built what they want. But it's a tough one to quantify. It can't hurt. That's kind of my sense. It will only help you if you have this. So it's a great opportunity. It has really helped overall statewide pass bonds. But as far as a rate and I don't know that I'm answering your question, James. I'm sorry, but
You're fine. Thank you.
Okay, is that enough? Okay.
I think there's 2 ways that they award this, and one is based on like need and financial impact of the district, and then there's another way called like just first in time. So because we have high property values, we're really low on that priority list. So if we were one of those top, impoverished districts, we would have had a better shot if we wouldn't reapplied. We were awarded this because Marlene's team was there submitting this to ODE right when the applications opened.
Okay.
And so that's kind of where you're kind of taking the risk of passing this up. It's not like they're looking at us and going like, yeah, you guys could really use this. It was like, oh, okay, well, you guys did a good job hustling. Do with it what you will.
Mm-hmm.
I thought I heard you say that, and I wanted to make sure that was what I'd heard. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. And then the seismic grant, it is guaranteed funds. It's not matching, but it has a different timeline too. And it has a little bit more restrictions on how you can use the dollars. You can't use it for new additions, for example, or new construction. And it is getting to be more and more competitive because they've awarded quite a few of these. So initially you had a much higher chance of them passing. Now, I think I heard anecdotally they had 200 applicants this last round and they awarded, I want to guess about 30, give or take, but we got 2 of those, so it happens. again, the TAP grant gives you covers the cost of preparing the report. What you need to do is make sure you select the right candidate for evaluation, because it's a fairly elaborate design process. It's really just a preliminary design, but there still is a lot of structural work that goes into it. And there's a cost estimate to give you a good idea of what it's going to cost. So you want to target the best candidate in the district for that work. So this is, I'm hoping you can see this. This is the spreadsheet that our structural engineer did out of the facilities assessment report that kind of ranks all of your buildings, kind of broken up by when they were built. And your elementary school classroom and offices ranks high, which is bad in this case. And your high school gymnasium also ranks high. Those are the two that have essentially the highest likelihood of collapse in the event of an earthquake. So we would start with those two as the best candidates to evaluate. This is where kind of the planning scope all gets kind of tied in. Obviously, if you're going to replace the elementary school, the high school gym seems like a good candidate to do this evaluation of. So then to get to the question about what we're doing. So this is the side that tries to kind of pull everything together. We've talked about kind of two ends of the spectrum as far as planning scope. The first one is, this is the repair and renovation as new, identified needs, $10.7 million. That does cover all the buildings in the campus, but that's no additional square footage. That's no renovation. It's really just taking what you've got and fixing it. That's that 10.7 million. If you take out the 4 million for the awesome grant dollars, and then you take out and assume that 2.5 million of that will be allocated towards the seismic upgrade. The end result, where this gets a little tricky is making sure that we have an apples to apples 2.5 million in that baseline scope for the seismic work specifically. But I think the beauty of those seismic grants is you can get a lot of other work incorporated in those. Gymnasiums are great for getting new roofs. For example, if your roof is old, and you can say you need to, the other end of the spectrum where we're adding on to the elementary school and the high school, both, everything that you saw that was identified, you back out the 4 million for the awesome grant, you back out that 2.5 million for the SRGP, and you end up with 17 million. The one caveat with this is the timing on that seismic grant is a different timeline than the November bond. So you would not know prior to your November election whether you were going to be awarded that seismic grant or not. So that's why I always try and hesitate to include it as a guaranteed thing until we know for sure. You submit for that, the grant applications get submitted end of the year, and then they get awarded. It used to be April, it's becoming more like May of the following year. So we would not know. So the election would be in November, March, April. So not fully until probably 6 months later would know if we were awarded that grant or not. So different entities, different timelines. So that's that piece. So that's the summary presentation on where we've gotten so far. So we wanted to present what we've done to date, and I'm going to probably turn it back over to Lane as far as questions and next steps. I'd be happy to answer any questions on what you guys saw from my end relative to the design. But I think the real question is, where do we go from here?
So one question I had is, so back on that last slide, slide 32, you mentioned because the seismic grant is not a sure thing.
Yep.
Based on that, what I'm hearing is our bond should go out at 19.5. Is that
what? So the two things with the seismic. Oh, sorry. What was that?
But am I reading between the lines pretty accurately? Because we don't know. That's not a sure thing.
Well, you can do it one of two ways. You can go out with that scope, yes, reduced and taken that seismic out. I think that's the right way to do it. And then once you get the grant, They don't want the work to start before the grant is awarded. That's another key component to the requirements. So if you hire a contractor to do the work before you're awarded the grant, for example, they really don't like that. And so they may not even award you the grant because of it. So it's almost like you want to keep that work completely discrete and separate and independent of anything else you're doing for that. One, to verify and make sure that you can actually get the grant and get the funds to do it. And then two, so that you don't lose the grant because you've put the cart before the horse, hiring someone before you've gotten the grant. So short answer after a long answer is yes. To be conservative, you would not want to count on that 2.5 million before you had it.
Yeah, so I think Mel, you did a really good job of catching us up and filling us in with what we were able to find. I think Cliff or Tim, do you guys want to speak to any of the work you guys have participated in or any takeaways you might have?
I'll make a very brief comment because most of what I had to say, I said in the memorandum I sent today. Good work on this process. I think the thing to recognize is that trying to repair the elementary school both seismically and to bring it up to standards for educational space right now is fraught with risk because once you tear into that, the concept of hidden conditions comes into play. You may find things involved in that add to your cost considerably without much benefit. So that, I think, is part of the reason why we were looking, at least at this point, after the COVID-19 stay in place, of accelerating this process a little bit so we could move forward, because we essentially lost 3 months with the shelter in place order. So that's pretty much what I have to say.
Cliff, I saw you talk about, I think you're muted. I can't hear you still. There we go.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay. I would agree. We're starting late and it's going to get later the longer we wait. At some point, the board is going to have to decide to what scope they want to go with this. We identified the high school gymnasium as being a place of shelter for the community in case of different events, fire, earthquakes, whatever. So we were looking at putting some of that seismic into that facility. And as far as the elementary, obviously that's the next highest risk in our opinion. So, at some point you got to determine whether you're going to go from the minimum to the maximum or somewhere in between. But I think the timing is critical. You're going to have to take a chance, I think, in November and try something, see if what we can do. In the meantime, we're going to have to identify with the public and see how they feel about us.
Yeah, I think Cliff made a good point there. We got to get this out, get people thinking about it, get it on their radar.
Yeah, and with the COVID, of course, we talked about that in facility meetings, how are you going to approach that with all that's been going on and people not knowing what's up ahead of us. So there's a lot of ground to cover here.
Yeah, the limiting our gatherings and, this presentation, having those slides if we'd had the Chainsaw Carving Festival this year, would have been a perfect opportunity to sit and talk with some folks, but yeah, we're not having those opportunities. So it's definitely going to be an issue. I think it's something we need to pursue. I'm one of those, I'll say it up front. If she said 17, we need to go for 20. We need to be safe because there's going to be something that rears its head. It's going to cost more. If you've ever built a house, there's always something that costs you more than you expected. You know, I guess, you know, Marlene, that would be a question I would have for you is,
Mhm.
are your numbers padded for that unknown?
Yeah. So that's part of that 35% soft costs that are in there. There are contingencies in there. And there is an allowance for, I believe, 1 year of escalation, assuming that when we're building these numbers, you know, as we're identifying the estimates, we're not going to be building for a year. So there is 1 year of escalation in there too.
Okay.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, I think like, go ahead.
But I was just going to say, just real quick there, I think there's two opportunities. The seismic rehabilitation grant, if we're confident that that doesn't kind of play into the planning for the rest of the campus, that's a fairly independent track. You know, the state has already paid for the report for us to go ahead and do that. We could get started on that and do that and be ready to submit that at the end of the year. We won't know about that before the bond either way, but what we are doing is committing to actually evaluating and putting the grant application in for the high school gym. And why would you not do that? If there's another building that would be a better candidate, it's really only the elementary school. So if this group feels confident that we're not going to put seismic retrofit dollars into the elementary school, I think giving us the go ahead to start that evaluation would be great, and we can get that going. And that can be honestly sort of a parallel independent track from the rest of the planning. Is a thought. I do think that there needs to be some more discussion and fine tuning of exactly what should and shouldn't be done. You know, I think there's a strong feeling that the elementary school addition wing makes sense. There's probably more discussion about whether the administration addition at the high school is as justified, or you know, if that's the right approach. Of course, anybody you ask, you'll get different opinions. But I think the committee did a really good job of prioritizing the needs. There's always still options in amongst there to kind of finalize what that scope is. So, you know, my recommendation would be to make a decision on the seismic retrofit, you know, independent of the planning, and get them both kind of moving forward again at the same time, where we're committing to the high school gym retrofit. We'll get that going with our engineers, and then we're going to figure out a way to do a version of this for community outreach and planning for the rest of the campus based on what we found to date. Open it up and say, these are our recommendations. You know, let's ground truth those. And if the board feels like it's appropriate, get that ready for the November bond.
So I think I totally agree with where you're going with the two tracks. I do think like if you guys are on the committee, remember, like I think it was like day 2, Marlene tried to give us spreadsheets and wanted us to go through things line by line by line. And
never happened.
Yeah, so we're a big picture group. So I think that step needs to happen. Maybe have another committee meeting, maybe have some board members who want to have a say in it, look at those line by line. Because I do think, like, you look at that number, that 17 kind of spooks me a little bit. I think if we can get it closer to like anywhere between like 12 and 15, I would personally feel a lot better. I don't know about you guys. So I think there's pieces that are in there that we really needed to have some good conversation with beyond the facilities committee, and then we can take that to the community in either this way, or if you guys have some other good ideas of how to have community engagement when we can't meet, think about it. So that'd be my, get going on the seismic, but then also go through line by line by line of what these numbers represent, and then decide what we want to keep and choose.
Yep.
Well, facilities committee, I'll take the new elementary wing takes away the baseball field. We don't have a team now. Who knows? Maybe we'll never will again. I personally like to think we will someday. Have you guys talked about those impacts, even access to the football field?
Cliff? I think you're muted still. Yeah.
Okay, there, can you hear me now?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, that's a big concern of mine. Obviously, if we do put an elementary building down on the baseball field, that's going to impact baseball if it ever wants to arrive again here at McKenzie, and I hope it does. We've had a rich tradition with baseball here, and I would hope it does. We did talk about possibly relocating the baseball field up where the elementary is now, up on the up above the school there. I would have to take a look and see if that actually there's enough room to do that, but it's possible. So that was talked about, and it would definitely impact our open space. That's a consideration we have. There's not a lot of open space up here on the Upper McKenzie. We're kind of blessed with having what open space we do have there. But there may be room up there, especially when you take away some of the existing buildings up in the elementary to put a baseball diamond, should we want to do that up above. I can't say for sure that would fit.
Okay.
It's not big enough for a track. We looked at that years ago, and so we have a track up above. As far as access to football field, I don't know that it would impact that so much. People walk around, to get to the football field anyway.
Okay.
It would take away some of the practice opportunities that we use currently. But, we're six-man football now. Maybe we'll get bigger again. I think football would be less impacted than baseball. Looks like Marlene's going to prove to me that there's room up there, but
I'll just move it. Yeah, no, I think that was we.
Full outfield in there though.
Yeah,
well,
so the outfield is.
Standard outfield is it varies from baseball field to baseball field. That's the beauty of baseball, So we currently have 350 feet down, 325 to 350 feet down each line currently right now, and a whole lot of center field out there, which was always not good necessarily, unless you were Danny Baldridge and can hit that far. But, we had a few. So it's possible we could have a baseball field up above.
And I just want to make sure that conversation has been had. It's my favorite sport, so.
Yeah, yours and my both. Most definitely. Part of me says, I hate to see an elementary go down there on that baseball field. It's got some historic significance to me and some of the older alumni, but, what's best for the school, we have to take a look at.
Exactly.
Definitely the elementary building needs to be addressed.
Yep. Yeah, that was definitely something that we talked about quite a bit too. So we can do some test fits as part of the next step in the planning to see exactly, what's the slope like, what kind of outfield could fit on there. Because I think that's a legitimate question. The shop stays, the pagoda stays, but if those other wings of that elementary go, how feasible is it to try and fit a field up there?
And again, like Cliff said, education is the main reason we're here.
It is, but
that baseball field is just a perk.
Yeah, that's the real community advantage too, I think. Yep. Okay. Is there a consensus among the group to support doing the seismic evaluation of the high school gym? Or is that something that you maybe want a little more time to think about?
I'm all for it myself, but I don't know if it's not really an action item now to vote on that. Or do we need to be an action item, Lane?
I don't think it has to be an action item. I think the big action item is going to be we need to probably set a meeting in July to then craft what we'd want to put in for November, because that deadline's August to get the ballot title in. So I think it seems like everybody's on board to go ahead with this direction with the seismic. And then we need to have another committee meeting with some board members and see what availability is between now and July, and then start reaching out to folks.
Yeah.
So I don't know. when we wrap up, I'll check with Marlene to see what her availability is within the next couple of weeks, so we can all get together and hack through that part. But I don't think it needs. Eventually, when they complete the application, then you'll have to approve the application for the grant, because we have to approve grant applications. So I think that would be the formal.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, if she's just looking for wanting to move forward with it, definitely has my thumbs up.
Is there anybody that's not for it? I'm certainly for it. I'm with James.
Well, I think we take action on this anyway, Lane, don't we? Just in a few minutes.
To talk about the bond campaign.
Right. So the bond, you said earlier, the bond, you have to have that submitted to the state by August 15th.
That's the plan to reopen. Let me find the Lane County deadline.
And to ask a kind of a question off of what Cliff was saying, just using baseball diamond as an example, does the bond plan on August 15th, does that have to be addressed at that point, or can that be addressed further down the road?
I think that we would have to have a pretty good idea of what the scope will be, because you'll be asking for a specific dollar amount and then laying out what sort of work will be done with it. So you can be a little broad with the scope of the work, but your dollar figure you have to have pretty well set.
And if you're going to go, if we're going to knock it down, Marlene, I don't remember the numbers, but if we're going to knock it down from roughly 20 million down to 12 to 15 million, that's the line item deletes that you're talking about, right?
Yeah, that would be going through kind of item by item and verifying what's on the list is what we want done, and we're not like missing something off the list. And I have seen districts kind of work both strategies. I definitely would agree with Lane that we want to have some flexibility in the way the ballot language is written, so that you have kind of a laundry list of needs ranked by priority, and you're going to try and get to as much as you can based on, because even the dollar amount, depending on what sort of bond premium you get, you can end up with different funds. So the strategy, I think, is providing specific enough language that the community trusts that you're building what you want them to build, but it still gives you some flexibility to adjust that and get as far down on your laundry list of needs, your scope and priority needs, as you can with the dollars you have. So you don't want to commit to something on the bottom of the list that you have to get to if it means skipping over some other priority items.
August 14th is the day to file for your ballot title.
Okay. So we've really only got a couple of weeks to give you the guidance that you need to write all that up, or whatever the report to the state is.
Well, so the state report and the seismic grant honestly is very independent of the election and the bond, even, because that will pay for the entire project. You don't have to go out for a bond for that 2.5 million. It's awarded, but the awesome grant and the planning scope and what you want to do relative to the 4 million matching dollars, that you do want to specify. So, and we have something, we submitted the long range plan to get the opportunity for these dollars. So we have a scope identified in there, and we have a dollar amount identified in there, and we still have the ability to deviate from that some, but that's kind of the baseline that we're starting with, and that's what they used to accept the grant at the time.
Okay.
Yeah, but with the 2-week timeline that you're talking about, Tim, yeah, for that bond and sussing out what the actual high end, realistic end would be, that's going to be a couple weeks. And then we'd have some time. We'd still have a little bit of time to, bounce it off community to see how they feel about it, and then get back together late July, early August to draft that ballot title and then get it to the election office.
Is Zoom an appropriate venue or whatever in order to hold those public type meetings, get input?
Yeah, we can. Sometimes a survey ahead of time to kind of get people to share some higher level priority that's more written, and then presenting kind of design drawings and walking them through the thinking behind that. I think that's sometimes helpful to do that in person via Zoom. So we can do a combination of both. Sometimes we'll do like an early survey that just asks about priorities and kind of direction to get a sense for the concerns of the community. And then we can try and respond to those with that first presentation, looking at the drawings, say, okay, here's what we heard, here's where we are to date, here's how your needs fit into that. And then we can kind of take it a little further. Normally in a lot of the planning stuff, it's very hands-on. We like to get people in groups and kind of, around tables with colored squares of paper and whatnot. So there's a way to do that. It's not as intuitive and people are a little bit more scared of it. You can doodle in Zoom, on top of drawings. Anybody can kind of sketch over the top, but how comfortable people are doing that really kind of varies by the audience, and usually the bigger group, it's different. That's probably the easiest way to say it, but it can be done.
And the voters of this district are mature.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yes.
I'm not sure how many of our voting population really are comfortable in Zoom, let alone writing in there.
Yeah, I think it's a very big ask. I would agree. Yeah.
I'm not sure if we could do a public meeting, but do a distancing kind of a thing in the seating or something. I have no clue, but.
Mm-hmm.
So then OSBA, no offense, is really making our lives difficult because insurance, they won't give us liability coverage through PACE for anything on campus until the end of the governor's executive order, which pretty much shut down campuses.
Right.
So I think unless they change the executive order after it ends in June 30th, we might be able to allow some people on, but we'd have to do it off campus. And then I don't know, I think liability wise, we're still on the hook unless people sign a form saying they won't sue us if they get COVID-19.
Right. And I'm in that group, the older group.
These are your people. Yes.
Lane,
sorry, James.
we vote tonight on the bond campaign and choose to move forward. And the budget committee gets together and does the line item veto, let's call it that, on the spreadsheet. And this has all got to be into the election by August 14th. Do we need to vote on that final submittal prior to the 14th, which means we need to have it before our next board meeting or have a special meeting because we don't meet till then August 19th?
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so we'd either have to plan do a July regular meeting time or plan one for the end of July or that first week of August. Because you're right, you guys do have to vote for the ballot title.
Okay.
It's what it is that talks about how much we're going to ask for, what the work's going to be, and then submitting that to.
Yeah, I was kind of thinking when you were talking about that, rather than doing the regular third Wednesday in July, to do it maybe at the very end of July or that first week of August, to give as much time as possible to process through it all, as long as we've got enough time to allow for whatever write-up needs to be done for the state for August 14th.
Yeah, I'm with Tim. I think that August 9th or 22nd, whatever that date is, either way, our July meeting, would that even give you guys time to complete what you need? I don't want to rush in and submit something that's subpar. If giving you a week or two extra is going to buy it, You know, again, I don't care if it's a special meeting, you know, we could call a special meeting in August there to give you as much time as needed, or give the group as much time as needed.
I imagine by July 29th, that would give us enough time to then be able to do that, clean up that next couple weeks and do some more outreach. As long as everybody's okay with. Part of it though is like, if we look at the list and cut it down and say, this is where we're at, we don't want to be speaking on your behalf saying, oh, what do you guys think about a $13 million bond, without having some sort of you guys saying, okay, where even if it's not voting for the title, it's saying we're supporting going out for this much.
It's gotta be 12 or 14. We can't do 13. Cliff will understand that, being a baseball guy.
That's right.
So let's see, today is June.
Hey, 13 was my baseball number. Come on.
Mine was 24, but we can't go there.
Too much.
So Lane, do you want to decide the date now, or do you want to wait to the end of the meeting?
Let's talk at the end of the meeting again, but I do think if we did that third week in July, a regular meeting, I'd give us a month from now to do the cleanup. Then you guys would have a good yay or nay on the dollar amount, and that would give us another few weeks to start feeling people out before we have to exactly get it into the county. That's my thought, but we can talk about it later at the end of the meeting.
Okay. That's July 22, right?
15th, because Wednesday is the 1st. Yeah.
Tax day. Okay. Any other, thank you, Marlene, for that.
Yeah.
Really nice presentation.
You bet. Thank you.
And Cliff and Tim for your input as well.
Welcome.
Anybody have any other comments or questions? All righty. Thank you, everybody. I guess we move into action items now. Superintendent evaluation. Very nice. I get to read this, Nancy, right? Yeah, okay. All right, so the board went through evaluating our superintendent last month and a little bit prior to that. And I've written up a evaluation summary that the board has seen, and I'm just going to read it for the public to know. The McKenzie School District Board of Directors has completed the 2019-2020 annual evaluation of Superintendent Lane Tompkins. In addition to typical superintendent duties, several extraordinary events developed this past year. All 7 board members served on the board in the 2019-2020 school year, and therefore were able to observe and directly work with the superintendent during the evaluation period. All 7 board members were present to evaluate the superintendent. This evaluation focused on 9 superintendent performance standards based on the ISLLC, which is the Interstate School Leaders Licensure Consortium, standards augmented by the AASA, which is the School Superintendents Association, with the NSBA, the National School Board Association. 2, a staff survey. 3, district goals, and 4, additional atypical circumstances. Regarding the 9 performance standards, the board determined that Superintendent Tompkins's performance was exemplary in the policy and governance, resource management, and ethical leadership themes. He was strong in the labor relations and communications and community relations themes. In the visionary leadership, effective management, curriculum planning, development, instructional leadership themes, Superintendent Tompkins met expectations. Overall, Superintendent Tompkins met or exceeded each performance standard. The board reviewed the staff surveys, including written comments. Overall, the combined staff ratings equaled 87.5 out of 100. Superintendent Tompkins was accomplished in enthusiasm, trust, respect, flexibility, cooperation, and knowledge. He was effective in leadership, openness, steadiness, judgment, honesty, confidence, and support. Finally, he was satisfactory in responsibility, innovation, decisiveness, and insightfulness. Several customary district goals, such as completing the McKenzie Education Association contract, board approval of the social studies adoption 712, participating in the McKenzie School Board self-evaluation, successfully completing the annual financial audit, reviewing state report cards, submitting the Division 22 standards, and continuing the Lane ESD local service plan was successfully managed. Several uncommon district goals were also completed this year. First, although state guidance regarding the student investment account was spotty, the grant team completed and submitted the grant on time. As other district and board goals are dependent on the content of the SIA grant, related goals were postponed due to the coronavirus pandemic. Second, the school board effort progressed as planned by completing the facilities assessment by Soderstrom Architects. Third, the Oregon School Capital Improvement Matching Program, AWESOME grant, was submitted for school bond matching dollars. I think, Lane, is that, well, anyway, fourth, the school district has partnered with Orchid Health to provide student health services. Finally, the school district was faced with an unusual challenge this year. The coronavirus pandemic completely changed the overall educational plan in the fourth quarter of the school year. State guidance changed several times at the outset of the pandemic, ultimately closing school buildings for the remainder of the school year. Instruction was modified and redesigned by the McKenzie staff and updated as state guidance changed. As the 2019-2020 school year ends, what instruction may look like next school year is still undecided. Superintendent Tompkins successfully worked alongside the McKenzie staff to offer the best educational program possible under such unusual conditions. Moving forward, the school board will be working with Superintendent Tompkins over the next few months to develop goals for the school district along with specific superintendent goals. A few areas to consider are the ongoing coronavirus pandemic effects, breaking barriers to student learning such as funding, increasing parental support, and improving student outcomes, especially in McKenzie's economically disadvantaged student subgroup, evolving the charter school tenants, and reviewing the administrative model to improve support of students and staff. The board looks forward to continuing the positive trend in our district. And that's it. So the board needs to move and, well, the board needs to move to either accept or not accept the evaluation summary. And before that, are there any questions or comments any of the board would like to make?
No, I'd say nice job this year, Lane.
Thank you.
I concur with that, totally. Okay, anybody want to consider to accept?
I move that we accept the superintendent evaluation as presented in our school packet and read by Tim.
Second.
Okay, it's James. So James moved to accept the evaluation summary as is, and Melissa seconded. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Awesome, thank you. And this will be, Nancy, I believe this goes on file. Okay, thumbs up on that.
Just for Nancy's record, did Alyssa vote? I can't, she's on mute.
I'm sorry?
Did Alyssa vote? She's on mute. For Nancy's record. No, Alyssa.
Yes.
Okay.
Sorry, I didn't realize I was still on mute. Yeah. I voted.
Oh,
Yeah.
Alyssa. Hi, Alyssa.
Hi.
Okay, so where are we at here? Oh, school board vacancy. So as we all know at this point, George has resigned his position, and we need to, that position has one more year or until next May when it gets not revoted, but when the election occurs next May, that this position would be filled. So we need to fill this position between now and then, and my presumption is that we would just post a position like we've done in the past, and then get applicants and do the interview process. Is that what everybody else is feeling?
Well, I don't want to
make that. I'm sorry. Yeah,
Okay.
that requires a motion. I move that we put that up for candidates.
Second.
Okay, so Kent moved that we move forward with filling the position. James second. Those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, and I'll work with Nancy to get that posted as soon as possible, and hopefully be doing interviews by the August board meeting. Okay, right, Nancy? Was that a real thumbs up? There you go. Okay. Thank you. Oh, board reorganization. We need to elect chair and vice chair. Wendy, do you want to say something?
Muted. Mutified.
Wendy, did you want to say something?
Wendy, you're on mute.
You're on mute. There, I could hear you. What was that?
I was trying to unmute and now I can't see y'all.
I unmuted.
There you are. There you are. You're in.
I didn't know how to unmute, but I think Nancy needed to say something.
Now she's muted.
We need to offer Lane a contract.
Oh, that would help.
Forgot about that.
So as a part of this, then my recollection was, or what we do is just move the current contract forward a year, correct?
2 years.
Yeah, that's
another year. That's a rolling.
You add a year, yes. It's a rolling year, yes.
Okay, so I'll move that we roll over Lane's contract.
I'll second.
So Tim moved to roll over Lane's contract. I think that was Alyssa seconded. All those in
Yes.
favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Nice. That was out unanimous, Lane. Very good. Okay. Sorry about that. And thank you, Nancy.
So on the motion on the vacant seat, do we have to vote to accept his resignation and then vote to post, or can you do it as one combined? Wendy's shaking her head. No, you can do it as combined.
It was on the consent, so you've already approved his resignation.
My apologies.
Okay. Okay, board reorg. We need to nominate and both a board chair and a vice chair. So we'll start with the board chair. Are there any nominations for that?
I would love to nominate Alyssa Brownlee for board chair.
I appreciate that, but I mean,
Come here,
you know
Jacob.
how crazy it is.
Yeah, I would, I hate going to the well too often, but I think Tim has done a phenomenal job. And if he's willing, I would like to nominate Tim.
I would second that.
Are there any other nominations?
Do we have to revoke Tim or Kent's nomination?
Say it again.
I think Alyssa already turned that down. So.
You turned it down.
Yes, thank you. I'm so sorry.
Yeah, it's a tough time of year.
We understand.
Oh,
I know you do in particular.
Is Mr. Halloran, are we still okay for that number of years according to the tenets of the, if we are, then I'm all for it.
Yeah, we looked it up in the, I think it's board policy BAB or something like that.
Fantastic.
4 years, right? 4 years.
Okay. Okay, so James moved for Tim to be the chair, and Kent seconded. All those in favor? Aye.
I
Aye.
think Alyssa seconded, but that's
yeah, with Alyssa.
Oh, Alyssa seconded, sorry.
I did. That's okay.
Vice chair. Any nomination for vice chair?
I nominate Melissa.
Yeah,
second.
that was Ken seconded. Any other nominations? So Melissa, can you hear?
I can.
You're all good with this?
Yeah, that's fine.
So Alyssa nominated Melissa for vice chair, and Kent seconded. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Okay. Board organizational chart, Lane.
So if you look back in the back of your packet, let's see, I think it's page, keep going. Page 24 of 28. Here's our organizational chart updated for the coming year. So that pretty much breaks down who does what.
Does that require a motion?
Yes.
Yep.
I move we accept the board organization chart as presented.
I second.
Kent moved to accept the board organization chart as is, and Alyssa seconded. All those in favor? Aye.
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 Okay. Bond campaign. Mr. Lane.
So I don't know if we need a formal vote, but if we wanted to, because I could probably wait until next time when you have a better look at the numbers. But if you wanted to vote to or discuss, I just put it here in action items in case the discussion turned into voting to support of what you heard. So this can wait until the next meeting, or if you guys think we need some more space to talk about that, feel free, or if not, we can revisit this later. Because I do think before you guys can vote to support a campaign, you're going to want to know a closer dollar figure.
Right.
Exactly.
So we'll just table it till the next time we meet.
Okay. To that July meeting.
So you don't require a vote on continuation. In other words, yay or nay, we're going forward.
Yeah, we'll get the numbers dialed in and then be ready to present in July, and hopefully you'll have enough information then to do
great.
yay or nay.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, Wendy for the resolutions.
Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to read each resolution, and then when I'm done reading it, someone needs to they need to approve the resolution as presented, or if you have changes, let me know.
Can we do it as a group?
It's on the very last page of your, is that right, Nancy? Did you put on the very last page? No, It's not a group thing. It's just someone needs to move and someone needs to second.
Yeah,
Got
you
it.
pretty much
Okay.
have to go through the motions.
Yeah.
Yeah, go through the motions, yes. And so here I go. Adopting the budget for the 2020-2021 Resolution 20A. Be it resolved that the Board of Directors of McKenzie School District number 68 hereby adopts the budget for fiscal year 2020-2021 in the total of $5,821,041. This budget is now on the file at McKenzie District Administration Office in San Roque, Oregon.
I move to approve Resolution 20A, adopting the budget for 2020-2021 as presented.
I'll second.
Kent moved to adopt resolution 20A, and I think Alyssa seconded. Sorry, Melissa, go ahead.
Melissa seconded. I second.
Melissa seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Making appropriations for 2020-2021 Resolution 20B. Be it resolved that the amounts for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2020, and for the purposes shown below are hereby appropriated. General Fund Instruction, $1,806,554. Support Services, $1,834,676. $122,000. Contingency, $140,000. Total, $3,903,230. Debt service, $0. Special revenue, instruction, $729,009. Support services, $656,510. Food service, $59,636. Student body, $61,300. Scholarship, $120,037. Total of $1,726,192. Capital improvement maintenance, $36,319. Facilities, $55,000. Total of $91,319. Total appropriations, $5,721,041. Unappropriated, $100,000. Total adopted budget, $5,821,041.
I move to approve resolution 20B, making appropriations for 2020-2021 as presented.
I second. So James moved to pass resolution 20-B and Tim seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Imposing the taxes for 2020-21 Resolution 20C. Be it resolved that the Board of Directors of McKenzie School District number 68 hereby imposes the tax provided for in the adopted budget at the rate of 4.6915 per 1,000 assessed value for permanent rate tax.
I move to approve resolution 20-C, imposing the tax for 2020-2021 as presented.
I second.
So James moved to pass resolution 20-C. Alyssa seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Categorizing the tax for the 2020-2021 Resolution 20D. Be it resolved that the taxes imposed are hereby categorized for purposes of Article 11, Section 11B as subject to education limitation, permanent rate tax, 4.6915 per 1,000. Excluded from limitation, general obligation bond, 0.
I move to approve resolution 20B, categorizing the tax for 2020.
Second.
Kent, I'm sure Kent, I didn't quite hear it, but I'm sure Kent moved to pass that. Is that correct,
Yes,
Kent?
correct, yes.
I think James seconded.
Yes.
All those in favor? Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Aye. Filing applications and reports for the 2020-2021 Resolution 20E. The filing of the Title 1A, Title 1D, Title 2A, Title 2D, Title 4, Title 5, Title 6, and IDA applications and reports for the 2020-2021 is duly authorized by the governing body of the McKenzie School District. The superintendent is duly authorized by this resolution to file these applications and reports. and to make representation and commitments herein for and in behalf of said applicant, and otherwise to act as authorized representative for the McKenzie School District in connection with these applications and reports.
I move to approve Resolution 20E, filing applications and reports for 2020-21.
I'll second.
Melissa moved to accept Resolution 20E. Melissa seconded. All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Aye.
Disbursement of general fund monies for 2020-2021, Resolution 20F. Whereas it is necessary for the district to expend funds from the general fund for federal and state projects prior to reimbursement, and this procedure is necessary to qualify for federal and state project money. Be it resolved that for the fiscal year beginning July 1, 2020, the Board of Directors of the McKenzie-Lane County School District 68 hereby directs the superintendent to loan funds from the general fund to special revenue funds until reimbursement can be claimed.
I move that we accept Resolution 20F.
Second.
Resolution 20F, James seconded. All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Thanks, Wendy. Okay, Lane, do you want to go over the MOA with OSEA?
Yeah, so pretty much it's just rolling over what they would have had this last year. So for the 2019-20 contract to this next year, the 2020-21. So it'd be like a 2% step, $25 for insurance. Then there's also some places noted about a couple positions that we added that we were going to add formally into the contract when we did this one, but didn't. So that'd be the transportation director. That reflects the 2%. And then also registered teacher scale is in there as well. So that's what they requested without having to get into doing a whole opening everything back up and bargaining all the other parts of the contract. Language wise is still in place. So it was hard to get everybody together with when the pandemic hit. That was about the time we were going to sit down and start bargaining. I know they were really not wanting to sit down. Just getting together was tough. So I think this is a good way to at least let us see how the economy starts to shake out and what next year will look like, and kind of go from there.
Some bargaining after January of next year.
Yep.
For the rest of the contract.
Yep.
I move that we accept the OSEA proposal as given.
I'll second.
Okay, so Kent moved to accept the MOA as presented and Melissa seconded. All those in favor, aye?
Aye.
Righty. That brings us to school board comments. I just want to thank the entire McKenzie staff for all the hard work it did. Everybody did. I mean, everybody's a piece of the engine that puts it all together. And I think it must have been incredibly difficult, but you didn't see that from the outside for sure. So I think I just like to thank everybody and support everybody for what parts that they played in the entire fourth quarter of this last school year, and actually going into next year too.
Second that.
Thank you.
Here.
Any other comments?
I'll be quick. Yeah, I would like to actually thank you, Tim, for I know you agreed to be our chair-elect again, and I haven't been chair before. I'm grateful I haven't. I know Kent has, and looks like a actually, yeah, Alyssa also too. That's a thankless job, and I appreciate your doing that. I know it does take a lot of time, and I'm not sure a lot of us have that extra time right now. And as a retired guy, you probably want to have some more fun in your life, and this wasn't it. So I appreciate it. So thank you.
Oh, thanks. Appreciate it.
He's an old admin. He's a glutton for punishment.
Yes, thank you so much, Tim.
Keeps me out of Carol's hair.
And I guess while we're at that, thinking people, we still got Cliff on the screen here. Those folks that are stepping up in the community to be on like the facility committee. I really appreciate that. Tim Lowry's checked out, but you guys are really making a difference, and we really appreciate your input. You've got a wealth of knowledge, and you bring in a different perspective. So I appreciate that. Thanks, Cliff.
You're welcome.
Yeah. Okay, other comments? All right, just have to, so our next regular board meeting, aside from everything else, our next regular board meeting is August 19th. And we need to solidify or to find a date to do to go through the various financial plans of the bond.
Did you say August 19th? Are we going to skip our July 16th meeting?
I don't know. Lane had said we should meet on July, was it 15th?
Yeah, the 15th would be like our regular meeting. I think that would give us enough time to get together and put together something a little bit more tight. And then would also allow some time to then do a little bit of outreach.
So we will still have our 15th. Okay.
Yeah. So if that's okay with you guys.
Yeah, I presume that'll be a Zoom meeting.
Can I say something?
Yep.
So our board organizational chart says we don't meet in July. So I don't think we have to vote to do it. I think we can just put next special meeting, July 15th.
Okay.
Is that the only thing we're going to talk about, or is it going to be a full-on meeting?
I think that would be the only thing we talk about.
Okay, so we could just call it a special meeting.
Okay.
And then
Does
put the
a
topic.
decision have to be made or an action be taken on that, Lane?
I think you can call meetings whenever you want.
Right.
So is it an action item meeting or is it like a study session?
I think it'll be an action item because at that point I'd hope that we're able to give you guys something to vote on.
Like Nancy said,
like a title resolution.
Or a dollar amount on the bond or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. All right, good.
Well, I'll be in Southern California with Carol's parents on that particular day, but I could just zoom in, right?
With Zoom, it'll be like you're right here with us.
There you go.
Give me an excuse to avoid the in-laws, huh? Yeah, kidding.
You're gonna get my vitamin B.
Yeah.
Well, I move that we adjourn the meeting. I think we've had.
Is the 15th good for everybody though?
Oh,
Works for me.
Okay. Okay. James moved to end this meeting.
I'll second.
Second.
This is seconded. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
All right. Thanks, everybody. That was a long one.
Thank you. Good evening.
Thank you, guys.